Hello, I'm Adam Nayman with another Ringer video essay. In the trailer for the new thriller Beast, Idris Elba takes his daughters on a family bonding trip to South Africa, only unfortunately to run into a man-eaten lion. Big cat and mouse hijinks ensue. Whether or not Balthazar Kormaker's film turns out to be a genuinely intense thriller or late summer junk, Beast belongs to a long, and sometimes noble tradition of movies in which animals attack, sometimes as a symbol of nature's wrath, sometimes as an excuse to show off state-of-the-art special effects, and sometimes because all we really want to see is a famous actor getting chased and eaten on screen. In a summer that's already brought us a thoughtful meditation on the role of animals in Hollywood productions in the form of Jordan Peele's Nope, Beast offers a good opportunity to look back at the history and some highlights of the animals attack subgenre, including a few movies that stretch the definition and a few that send it up as well. When the legendary producer David O. Selznick greenlit King Kong in 1932, he was frustrated with director Marion C. Cooper that it took too long for the title character to show up.
I'm gonna do some butting in.
What's your trouble, Driscoll?
When do we find out where we're going?
Pretty soon now.
Cooper stuck to his guns, though, and the results were worth the wait. Finally arriving almost 30 minutes into the adventure thriller bearing his name, Kong was the most spectacular special effects creation in the young history of cinema, and perhaps the first movie star of his era to literally seem larger than life on the big screen. It's a fun bit of trivia that the great ape's bizarrely fluctuating scale, the way he seemingly changes size from scene to scene, made Cooper's film a favorite of surrealist artists, and at times, King Kong is genuinely hallucinatory and nightmarish. Nearly 100 years later, Willis O'Brien's pioneering stop-motion model work feels more tactile and terrifying than CGI. The spaciousness of Kong's themes is legendary, but even more than its razor-edged racial metaphor and tragic unrequited romance, it endures as an allegory for filmmaking. Its anti-hero, Carl Denham, is a Hollywood director who's willing to risk life and limb, not just his own, for spectacle. Transported to New York and thrust into the media spotlight, Denham's star is reluctant for his big close-up, and all hell breaks loose. You could draw a line between Kong and the rampaging chimpanzee Gordy in Jordan Peele's Nope, but then you could probably draw a line from Kong through pretty much every animal attack movie ever made. The conceptual joke of 1954's Them is the idea of something microscopically small being inflated to unmanageable proportions. In this case, a whole nest worth of irradiated ants emerging in the New Mexico desert to terrorize humanity. Like Godzilla, which came out in the same year, Gordon Douglas's sci-fi classic carries echoes of Hiroshima and Bikini Atoll. As one scientist explains,
"When man entered the atomic age, he opened a door into a new world."
The stoic, cautionary tone of Them skirts unintentional comedy at times. But the film is still extremely well executed, from its creepy opening sequence, featuring a catatonic young survivor of an ant attack, to a near-climactic assault by the bugs on a US Army freighter that has its own comic book grandeur. Them was a massive hit and left a deep pop cultural imprint at the end of the 1950s. In the mid-90s, Eight-Legged Freaks emerged as a spiritual remake, integrating sequences from the original as an affectionate homage. Circa 1963, the closing shots of the birds, showing characters tiptoeing through flocks of quietly squawking killers, would have been subconsciously charged with arms race anxieties. No less than the more explicitly political failsafe in Dr. Strangelove, Alfred Hitchcock's film imagined the end of the world as we knew it, and it imagined it as death from above. The Birds is based on a short story by Daphne du Maurier, who was channeling her own memories of World War II strafing in England, while simultaneously evoking even more primal fears of the natural world. The material seemed a bit of an odd fit for Hitchcock, whose great gift was for aberrant human psychology. Charged with making a kind of monster movie, Hitchcock trotted out expert suspense mechanics without providing much in the way of explanation.
Why are they doing this? The birds?
We don't know, honey.
Why are they trying to kill people?
I wish I could say.
In Psycho, Norman Bates' motivations had been explained in detail, including his interest in stuffed taxidermied birds. In The Birds, though, it's never clear why the titular creatures are attacking, or what they want, or whether the people on screen are being punished, or if the whole catastrophe is simply a byproduct of some larger cosmic indifference. Much imitated and parodied.
Is this a lesson about man's lack of respect for nature?
Oh, I don't know. Damn it, I don't know. Just kiss me.
What? No!
But never quite equal as a portrait of nature in revolt. The Birds doesn't just hold up, it shames many of the more expensive animal attack movies to come. The best thing that ever happened to Steven Spielberg's career was that the mechanical great white constructed to serve as the namesake of his sophomore feature Jaws malfunctioned almost the moment it went into the water. Necessity is the mother of invention, and faced with a broken star that couldn't be shown as much as dictated in the script, the 27-year-old director employed preternatural powers of suggestion over his audience. Between the bobbing immersive cinematography, the whip-crack editing, and the pounding menace of John Williams' score, Jaws' bad guy became a palpable presence even when he wasn't seen. By the time the giant rubbery model was chowing down on Robert Shaw, the audience's belief was suspended high enough that the cheesiness of the visuals didn't really matter. When Jaws came out in 1975, the shark was seized on as a metaphor for everything.
A what?
From a slumping American economy, to lurking foreign threats, to the repressed sexual desires of Roy Scheider's protagonist, Chief Martin Brody.
Want to get drunk and fool around?
Oh, yeah.
The movie was such a big hit that people thought it had to mean something. Echoes of Herman Melville's Moby Dick, the story of a carnivorous monster inspiring fear and obsession, provided a potential literary entry point, but more than anything, Jaws was just an illustration of the line delivered by Richard Dreyfuss.
What we are dealing with here is a perfect engine, an eating machine.
With Spielberg at the helm, Jaws was a perfect engine. Massive, precision-tuned, and unstoppable, changing not only the history of animal attack movies, but the history of summer movies and American cinema as a whole forever. There's an anecdote that when the venerable B-movie producer Roger Corman saw Jaws in 1975, he leaned over in the theater and told a friend that he was fucked. The paradigm was shifting, and it was going to leave schlockmeisters like Corman behind. The genius of Jaws lay in how it took B-movie character types and cliches and outfitted them with A-list resources and actors. As a result, authentic B-movie mavens like Corman could no longer compete. Their cheap spectacles were out of date. As an act of opportunistic and slyly principled revenge, Corman produced Joe Dante's wickedly funny film Piranha, in which thousands of the titular carnivorous fish, mutated and released into the waters around a summer camp, munch on unsuspecting swimmers. The premise was a perfect distillation of the idea of filmmakers punching up. Instead of one big creaky great white, Dante and screenwriter John Sayles filled the screen with countless wriggling razor-toothed predators.
They're eating the guests, sir.
Piranha doubled down on Jaws' government cover-up theme by introducing a strain of Vietnam War critique to the narrative.
They called it Operation Razor Teeth.
What was it all for?
To destroy the river systems of the North Vietnamese.
The perfect through line for a lean, mean movie designed with subversive satire in mind. Stephen King's best-selling novel about a rabid Saint Bernard terrorizing its owners mercilessly weaponized the cliché of dogs being man's best friend. It made the reader feel terrible for the title character, whose good nature erodes, leaving only blank, mindless fury. Louis Teague's 1983 film adaptation of Kujo loses a lot of King's interiority, including glimpses into the mind of a dog, but as a siege movie that traps a mother and son in a Ford Pinto and watches as they're stalked and assaulted at regular intervals, it's really quite effective, and brutally unsentimental. Like Old Yeller if the audience were rooting for the dog to get shot at the end. The casting of Dee Wallace, the oblivious but empathetic mom from E.T., helped to drive home the anti-Spielbergian ethos of the entire production, the idea that there's no relief or redemption on hand here for human or animal alike. Although the film version changed the novel's ending, King was a fan, placing Kujo in the top tier of adaptations of his work. Kujo was played by 4 St. Bernards, several mechanical dogs, and at one point a black Labrador Great Dane mix in a St. Bernard costume. The superb editing by Neil Travis completes a convincing illusion and makes Kujo a better than expected animal attack film.
What do they got in there, King Kong?
The illusion points up Steven Spielberg's aspirations in what was at that point the biggest production of his career, and a return to the pounding primal terror of Jaws. One way to look at Jurassic Park is as King Kong minus Kong, just dinosaurs, and also as an analogy for filmmaking. In lieu of the narcissistic Carl Denham, Richard Attenborough's dotty old geneticist billionaire John Hammond is plagued by regret over trying to put together the greatest show on Earth.
I wanted to show them something that wasn't an illusion. Something that was real. Something that they could see and touch.
What makes Jurassic Park so intense, though, beyond its metaphors, is how Spielberg insists on treating the dinosaurs like animals rather than monsters. They're swift, brutal, instinctive, and completely non-anthropomorphic. In a rebuke to the theory of evolution, this summer's Jurassic Park Dominion staged a reunion between Spielberg's original cast, including Sam Neill and Laura Dern, and a new cast of characters. All that it really succeeded in showing, though, was how painfully lacking the second group really was. In 1898, a pair of male lions preyed mercilessly upon construction workers who were building the Kenya-Uganda Railway. Upon researching this real-life story, screenwriter William Goldman came to the conclusion that the so-called man-eaters of Tsavo were genuinely, uncannily evil, and he went from there. Like most period pieces, The Ghost in the Darkness plays fast and loose with the facts, inventing famous big game hunter played by Michael Douglas, and changing the order of events totally. The plan, according to Goldman, was to make something that felt like Lawrence of Arabia meets Jaws.
Changing plans.
As directed by journeyman Stephen Hopkins, though, The Ghost in the Darkness is neither sweeping nor scary enough to justify those comparisons. The filmmaker himself has called the movie a mess, while Goldman blamed Douglas's demands for his character to have an extensive backstory for unbalancing the screenplay.
I'm sure you know what's best.
The lions are well played, though, by veteran animal performers named Caesar and Bongo, and align with the film's excellent sound department, who make The Ghost in the Darkness sound genuinely demonic when they're out there lurking in the dusk. The sound designers are the film's real MVPs. There are two slimy and ridiculous monsters on display in Anaconda. A 30-foot snake that eats, among other things, a phony-looking jaguar and Danny Trejo, and John Voight as the bounty hunter Cerrone.
Don't make me out a monster. I didn't eat the Captain Mateo.
A performance that doesn't just chew the scenery, but swallows it and regurgitates it whole. Luis Lusa's surprise 1997 late summer hit is an old-school creature feature with deliberate echoes of the creature from the Black Lagoon, and the shameless campiness of Anaconda is not a bug, but a feature. The film was a showcase for a young Jennifer Lopez with her career on the upswing. She had the lean, springy physicality of an action heroine, and she holds her own against the ridiculously over-the-top Voight, whose death scene, punctuated with a literal wink to the camera, is a laugh-out-loud, bad-taste classic. As a movie with anything to say about humanity's conflict with the natural world, Anaconda's laughable. As a throwaway that's in on its own joke, it's an awful lot of fun. At one point, Ice Cube's character is shown nodding along to a song on the radio featuring Ice Cube.
Hey! Don't touch my radio!
This is not brilliant Charlie Kaufman level self-reflexivity, but it is a sign of how seriously you're supposed to take the whole thing. It's debatable whether Werner Herzog's sobering documentary belongs on this list, and maybe it doesn't. But Grizzly Man's subject, the late naturalist Timothy Treadwell, was so determined to be the star of his own personal animal attack horror movie, to become famous as a kind of self-styled nature warrior, that its inclusion, I think, makes sense.
Be warned. I will die for these animals. I will die for these animals. I will die for these animals.
The question of whether Treadwell's self-produced field recordings, which depicted him in close proximity to grizzly bears over a course of many years, constituted activism, narcissism, careerism, suicidal naivete, it's hard to say. Herzog mostly doesn't bother editorializing about Treadwell. Instead, he lets these videos, some of which feature breathtakingly intimate footage of bears, speak for themselves. Crucially, the audio of Treadwell's death at the hands of his subject is kept off the film's soundtrack, in a moment that shows Herzog's ability to split the difference between ethics and exploitation. What we actually don't hear, and actually end up imagining, is worse than any ever recording could be, and Herzog knows this.
Truly, you must never listen to this.
I know, Werner. I'm never going to.
And you must never look at the photos that I've seen at the coroner's office.
I will never look at them.
Yeah.
Grizzly Man is a strange, unsettling, and ultimately beguiling work of nonfiction that reminds us not only of the dangers of the natural world, but also the dangers of romanticizing or idealizing it. A mistake that Timothy Treadwell, for all his talent and all his empathy, paid for with his life. The social media hype about The Grey suggested a campy Snakes on a Plane style romp, a movie in search of a Twitter meme. But Joe Carnahan's 2011 film is meaner and more existential than that. Yes, Liam Neeson's special set of skills gets a workout here, and those skills include dodging, tracking, and punching wolves. But the movie doesn't play this idea for camp or for comedy. Neeson's character is going through a spiritual crisis, even before his plane crashes in Alaska. The pack of Arctic wolves stalking the star and the other stranded frostbitten characters become manifestations of the men's existential dread. The wolves are elusive and relentless, they appear out of nowhere and disappear just as quickly. In the end, The Grey ultimately abandons its realism, but it's still an admirably muscular, low-key entry into the animals attack genre, a movie that's likely to age better despite slightly ropey CGI effects. Like a cross between Jaws and Frogger, TheShallows stars Blake Lively on the wrong side of a secluded lagoon. She's between a rock and a hard place, the hard place being a great white shark that keeps eating anybody in the vicinity who might be able to help her. Because director Jaume Collet-Serra is a master of tense real-time action set pieces, TheShallows flies by, focused on the logistics of survival and escape like a prison film. The shark doesn't have much personality, and it's not a symbol of anything like Jaws, but it doesn't need it. It's an obstacle to be overcome. TheShallows also has a second, wonderful animal character.
No, I'm not totally alone. I got this little dude, Steven Seagal, here, keeping me company.
And whose company inspires the iron-willed, fight-or-flight instincts necessary to prevail during her ordeal. We hope that you've enjoyed this video essay taking a look at some films in the animal attack subgenre. Obviously, we couldn't put them all in there, so if there's any that we forgot, any that you think should not have been left off, please leave them in the comments. Till next time, I'm Adam Nayman for The Ringer, and thanks very much for watching.